The neon-drenched streets of Neo-Shanghai pulsed with an electric heartbeat as Dr. Sarah Chen pushed through the evening crowd. Her wrist display flickered with erratic quantum readings, each spike matching the rhythm of the passing masses. 15 billion souls on Earth, and some days it felt like half of them were crammed into this single megalopolis. The lab's entrance loomed ahead, a stark monolith of graphene and steel rising above the street vendors and their aromatic food stalls. Sarah pressed her palm against the biometric scanner, the familiar tingle of the quantum field detector washing over her skin. As the door slid open, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was different about today's readings. Dr. Chen. The lab's AI greeted her, its voice carrying an unusual note of urgency. The consciousness monitors recorded anomalous patterns during your absence. Would you like to review the data? Sarah dropped her bag on her cluttered desk, holographic displays springing to life around her. Show me everything, ARIA. Start with the temporal anomalies we detected last week. The air filled with cascading waves of blue light as billions of data points materialized. Human consciousness readings from across the globe, each one a tiny thread in an impossibly complex tapestry. But there, hidden in the chaos, Sarah spotted something that shouldn't exist, a pattern. ARIA. Isolate frequency band theta 9. She commanded, her fingers dancing through the holographic interface. The display shifted, revealing a series of synchronized peaks that sent a chill down her spine. This is impossible. Consciousness synchronization at this scale has never been recorded, ARIA confirmed. The statistical probability. I know the statistics, Sarah cut in, her mind racing. But we're seeing it happen. 15 billion human minds. They're starting to resonate. She pulled up historical data, comparing it to the present readings. The pattern was subtle but undeniable. Human consciousness was changing, evolving in response to the unprecedented population density. Traditional models predicted cognitive breakdown at these numbers, yet humanity was adapting, finding new ways to cope with the neural pressure. A soft chime interrupted her analysis. Dr. Chen, you have a priority message from the United Earth Council. Sarah frowned. The UEC rarely contacted individual researchers directly. Display it. The message was brief but shocking. All quantum consciousness research is hereby classified. Maintain your current protocols but report any anomalous findings immediately. Priority level. Alpha. They know something, Sarah muttered, her fingers hovering over the holographic controls. ARIA, when did these consciousness patterns first appear? Initial traces were detected 3 months ago, coinciding with the population reaching 15 billion. However, the amplitude has increased by 47% in the past week alone. Sarah was about to dive deeper into the data when every display in the lab suddenly flickered. The quantum readings spiked, their values climbing beyond anything she'd ever seen. Through the lab's panoramic windows, she watched in disbelief as the night sky above Neo-Shanghai began to change. It started as a subtle distortion, like heat waves rising from summer pavement. Then the very fabric of space seemed to tear, revealing something massive and impossible. The object that emerged was like liquid mercury, its surface reflecting the city's countless lights as it stretched across the skyline. ARIA, Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible over the sudden silence that had fallen over the city. Are you seeing this? Affirmative, Dr. Chen. The object appears to be approximately 20 kilometers in length. Its composition is unknown, but the quantum signature it's emitting matches the anomalous patterns in our consciousness data. Sarah stood transfixed, watching as more of the impossible ship revealed itself. In that moment, she understood with perfect clarity. The consciousness patterns weren't just evolution. They were a beacon, and something out there had answered. Her wrist display blinked with an incoming priority alert from the UEC, but she already knew what it would say. Humanity had reached a threshold, but it wasn't the one they'd expected. As the alien ship settled into position above Neo-Shanghai, Sarah realized that everything they thought they knew about human consciousness was about to change. The United Earth Council chamber buzzed with barely contained panic. Delegates from every major city-state filled the circular hall, their worried whispers echoing off marble walls. Sarah stood before them, her quantum data displayed on the massive holoscreen behind her, but all eyes kept drifting to the other party in attendance. The consortia representatives defied easy description. Their forms shifted like oil on water, contained within environmental suits that seemed to bend light itself. Only their eyes remained constant, geometric patterns of swirling gold that focused on Sarah with unsettling intensity. "Your species has reached critical neural density." The lead representative's words appeared directly in everyone's minds, accompanied by a sensation like falling. "We have seen this before. We have lived this before." Sarah gestured to her data. "With respect, our readings suggest something unprecedented is occurring. The consciousness patterns are a precursor to collapse," the consortia interrupted. A series of mathematical equations materialized in the air, their complexity dwarfing anything human mathematics had achieved. When population density reaches this threshold, the neural interference becomes unsustainable. Your minds will begin to fracture within months. The chamber erupted in frightened murmurs. Sarah studied the equations, her enhanced neural implants struggling to process their complexity. But there, in the multidimensional matrices, she spotted something the consortia had missed, or chosen to ignore. "These equations," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos, "they're based on your species' neurological architecture. You're assuming human consciousness follows the same patterns." The consortia's form rippled, their golden eyes contracting. "All sentient species we have encountered share these fundamental limitations. Your own data shows the building pressure." Sarah stepped forward, her heart pounding. "No. Our data shows transformation, not deterioration. Look at the theta-9 frequency band. Those patterns aren't random interference. They're synchronization points." She pulled up her latest readings from Neo-Shanghai. "Humanity isn't fighting the neural density. We're adapting to it. Every instance of supposed interference is actually a moment of shared consciousness." "Impossible." The consortia's thought voice carried an edge of something Sarah hadn't expected. Fear. No species can survive such connectivity. "The psychological damage is exactly what your species experienced," Sarah finished. "But humans evolved differently. Earth's conditions forced us to develop in close proximity, to adapt to mental pressure rather than flee from it." The mathematical display shifted, incorporating Sarah's data. The equations twisted, transformed, and suddenly revealed a pattern that made several council members gasp. The consortia's golden eyes flickered rapidly. If these calculations are accurate, their thought voice had lost its certainty. "Your species isn't approaching a limit. You're approaching a threshold we never knew existed." Sarah nodded, but before she could respond, her wrist display erupted with alerts. Similar notifications chimed throughout the chamber as every connected device received the same data surge. "It's happening again," she announced, pulling up the live feeds. "A consciousness synchronization event, stronger than any we've recorded." The consortia's forms became almost transparent as they analyzed the incoming data. "We detected similar emanations from other worlds," they admitted. "But those species collapsed before reaching this stage. We assumed intervention was necessary for survival." "And how many times," Sarah asked, her voice tight with controlled anger, "did your intervention actually cause the collapse you were trying to prevent?" The silence that followed was deafening. Outside the chamber windows, more consortia ships emerged from tiers in space, their liquid metal forms taking position around Earth's major population centers. But Sarah noticed something the others missed. They weren't deploying evacuation equipment. They were setting up observation arrays. "We will watch," the consortia announced finally. "We will study. And if you are wrong, if the human mind cannot sustain this neural load, we will do what must be done." Sarah looked at the worried faces of the council members. then back to her consciousness readings. The synchronization patterns were growing stronger, more coherent. Humanity wasn't approaching its limit. It was about to demonstrate just how limitless it could be. But first, they had to survive the observers who had appointed themselves humanity's judges. Another one, Sarah muttered, watching the footage from Lagos. On her holoscreen, a street vendor named Adebayo Okafor solved complex quantum equations in chalk on the sidewalk, drawing crowds of stunned onlookers. According to his file, he had never studied physics beyond secondary school. The lab's windows darkened automatically as a consortia ship passed overhead, its liquid metal form casting strange shadows across Neo-Shanghai. 3 weeks since first contact, and the incidents kept multiplying. ARIA, compile the latest consciousness synchronization data, Sarah commanded, rubbing her tired eyes. Focus on anomalous cognitive events. The AI's response was immediate. In the past 24 hours, 47 cases of spontaneous advanced problem solving, 32 instances of shared dream state experiences, and 15 cases of predictive behavior patterns. Most notably, the children of Buenos Aires. Sarah pulled up that footage. 300 children, none older than 10, in different parts of the city, all humming the same complex melody at exactly the same moment. A melody that had never been recorded before. Her quantum consciousness monitors pulsed with increasing frequency. Each spike corresponded to another incident somewhere on Earth. Humanity's neural network was lighting up like a Christmas tree, and the consortia's observation arrays were registering every flicker. Dr. Chen, ARIA interrupted. Incoming priority communication from Research Station Omega. The holoscreen shifted, revealing Dr. James Morrison's weathered face. The dark circles under his eyes matched her own. Sarah, please tell me you're seeing this too. The consciousness patterns, they're becoming coherent. Not just coherent, Sarah replied, sending him her latest data. They're organizing. Each synchronization event is stronger than the last, but it's not random. There's a pattern emerging. The consortia are terrified, James said, lowering his voice. Their observation protocols are shifting. They're not just watching anymore. They're preparing for something. Sarah was about to respond when a new alert flashed across her screen. James, are you getting this? Mass synchronization event building in Asia. The readings were off the charts. Millions of minds across the continent were beginning to resonate at the same frequency. The consortia ships above shifted position, their liquid metal forms rippling with apparent agitation. It's not just Asia. James's voice was tense. Look at the global network. Sarah expanded the display, and her breath caught. The consciousness patterns were spreading like waves across the planet. Europe was lighting up. Then Africa. The Americas. Each population center joining the symphony of synchronized thought. ARIA. Analyze the pattern structure, Sarah commanded, her fingers flying over the holographic controls. What's the focal point? Processing. The AI responded. The consciousness wave appears to be converging on. Dr. Chen, the focal point is this facility. Specifically, your location. Sarah felt it then, a subtle pressure at the edges of her mind. Not painful, but present. Like standing in the ocean and feeling the tide change. Around her, lab equipment began registering unprecedented quantum fluctuations. James, she managed, are you feeling? Yes. He cut in. Everyone is. Sarah, I think this is it. The threshold the consortia never reached. The pressure grew stronger. Through the lab windows, Sarah could see people in the streets below stopping, looking up at the sky, their expressions a mixture of wonder and confusion. The consortia ships had gone completely still, their observation arrays blazing with energy as they recorded everything. Dr. Chen. Aria's voice seemed to come from very far away. Your neural patterns are synchronizing with the global consciousness field. Would you like me to attempt isolation? But Sarah shook her head. She understood now. This wasn't something to be isolated from. This was what humanity had been building toward since the first tribes gathered around fires and shared their thoughts through crude language. The pressure peaked. Sarah closed her eyes, and 15 billion minds touched for the first time, each one a note in a symphony that had never been played before, a symphony that would change everything. The consortia watched, their golden eyes wide, as humanity did what they had thought impossible, embraced the very thing that had driven them to the stars. Evacuation sirens wailed across Neo-Shanghai as Sarah raced through streets choked with panic. Above, consortia ships deployed massive energy fields, their liquid metal forms stretching like vast nets across the sky. The consciousness synchronization event had lasted just 3 seconds, but its effects rippled through human civilization like a tsunami. The quantum readings are still climbing. Aria's voice came through Sarah's neural link. Population centers worldwide are reporting unprecedented neural activity. A massive screen on a nearby building showed scenes of chaos from around the globe. In New Delhi, thousands moved in perfect unison through crowded streets, avoiding accidents before they could happen. Moscow's emergency response teams arrived at disaster sites minutes before earthquakes struck. London's financial district froze as traders simultaneously foresaw a market crash and prevented it with synchronized trading. "They're trying to contain us," Sarah realized, watching the consortia's energy fields pulse with strange light. "They think they're protecting Earth from a consciousness cascade." Her wrist display flashed with urgent messages from research stations worldwide. The data confirmed her fears. The consortia weren't just observing anymore. They were actively attempting to dampen the growing neural resonance between human minds. A crowd had gathered in Central Plaza, their faces turned skyward. Sarah pushed through them, noting how they unconsciously moved to let her pass, like a school of fish parting around a stone. The shared consciousness was leaving echoes, subtle connections that lingered. "Dr. Chen," a voice called out. Dr. Wei Lin, her former mentor, emerged from the crowd. "The dampening fields. They're based on the same technology the consortia used on their own world. But our brains are responding differently." Sarah nodded, pulling up her latest readings. "The fields aren't suppressing the consciousness network. They're forcing it to adapt. Every attempt to contain it just makes the connection stronger." A deep rumble shook the city. Above, one of the consortia ships writhed, its liquid metal surface distorting as it tried to maintain the dampening field. The neural feedback from billions of human minds was overwhelming their technology. "Aria," Sarah commanded, "get me a direct link to the consortia command ship." "Impossible," the AI responded. "Their communications error." Sarah gasped as a wave of sensation washed over her. Not just her. Everyone in the plaza stopped, connected by something deeper than technology. Through this shared consciousness, she felt the consortia's growing fear, their rigid certainty crumbling as they faced something beyond their experience. "We don't need their communication systems," she whispered. Closing her eyes, Sarah reached out through the consciousness network, her thoughts carried on waves of quantum resonance. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The consortia's collective mind touched hers, ancient and vast and terrified. Through this connection, she saw their history, how they had fled from this very precipice, spreading their population thin across the stars to avoid the neural density that threatened to break them. "But we're not breaking," Sarah projected the thought outward, feeling billions of human minds resonate with her words. "We're becoming something new, something your equations never predicted." The dampening fields flickered. In that moment of weakness, human consciousness surged. Across Earth, people turned to strangers and spoke their thoughts. Children separated by continents shared the same dreams. Scientists in different fields made breakthrough connections, their minds bridging gaps that had seemed insurmountable. The consortia ships shuddered, their liquid metal forms rippling with indecision. Their rigid protocols warred with undeniable evidence. Humanity was not following their models of civilization's limits. Through the fading dampening fields, Sarah felt something else. Curiosity. Not from humans, but from the consortia themselves. Their fear was being replaced by wonder as they witnessed something they had never imagined possible. The sirens fell silent. The energy fields dissolved. And in their place, a new kind of communication began. Not just between humans, but between species. The very ability the consortia had feared and fled from became the bridge to understanding them. Sarah opened her eyes to a changed world. The crisis wasn't over, but its nature had transformed. Humanity hadn't just survived the consciousness threshold, they had shattered every assumption about what was possible when minds dared to grow closer instead of running away. The consortia's primary research vessel hung above Neo-Shanghai like a mirror reflecting Earth's uncertainty. Inside its liquid metal halls, Sarah stood before their council, her mind still buzzing from the neural dampening field's collapse. The ship's internal architecture shifted constantly, adapting to the quantum fluctuations emanating from the human population below. Your species defies our fundamental understanding of consciousness. The consortia's thought voice resonated through the chamber. Their golden eyes had transformed, now displaying fractal patterns that matched human brainwave frequencies. The very mechanism that destroyed our ancient civilization appears to be strengthening yours. Sarah projected her response through the neural network that now connected human minds. We discovered something in the quantum data. During the global synchronization event, human consciousness didn't just connect, it evolved. She shared the readings from her lab. Billions of human minds had touched during those 3 seconds, but the effect wasn't temporary. New neural pathways had formed, quantum bridges between consciousness that defied traditional physics. A construction worker in Dubai now understands quantum mechanics, Sarah explained. A physicist in Brazil can feel the rhythm of street poetry. A child in Kenya grasped the solution to atmospheric carbon sequestration. We're not just sharing thoughts, we're sharing understanding. The consortia's forms rippled with agitation. Through the ship's translucent walls, Sarah could see more of their vessels arriving, drawn by readings they couldn't explain. Humanity had become a puzzle that challenged their most fundamental beliefs. Our ancestors reached this same neural density. They shared, projecting images of their history. Sarah saw vast cities of living metal, billions of minds pressing against each other until the pressure became unbearable. The pain of proximity drove us to the stars. We thought distance was the only solution. But you never tried to adapt, Sarah realized, reading deeper into their shared memories. You had the technology to dampen neural connections, to force minds apart. You never considered strengthening them instead. A surge of consciousness swept through Earth's population. Sarah felt it like a wave, carrying fragments of thoughts and innovations. Across the globe, humans were instinctively building on each other's ideas, solving problems that had plagued civilization for centuries. The consortia's monitoring equipment overloaded, unable to process the complexity of human neural interactions. Their liquid metal environment became erratic, reflecting their growing uncertainty. Impossible, they projected, but Sarah felt their conviction wavering. Neural density at these levels should cause psychic breakdown. Not this. Sarah approached their central consciousness node, her own mind now capable of interpreting their alien technology. You've been measuring everything through the lens of your own evolution. But Earth's conditions were different. Our populations were never truly isolated. We had to develop ways to coexist, to share space and thoughts and feelings. She connected to the ship's systems, sharing humanity's historical data. Every human innovation, language, art, music, science, came from our ability to share consciousness through various means. What's happening now isn't new. It's just the next step in that evolution. The consortia absorbed this information in stunned silence. Through their neural link, Sarah felt the impact of this revelation rippling through their collective consciousness. Their entire civilization was built on the assumption that minds must remain separate to survive. Your species, they finally responded, has not reached its limit. You have discovered a path we never dared to walk. Outside, the evening sky filled with aurora-like patterns as human consciousness continued to evolve. Children born after the synchronization event were displaying abilities that defied explanation. The quantum bridges between minds were becoming stronger, more stable. Sarah smiled, feeling the pulse of billions of connected minds. Perhaps it's time for your species to learn what happens when consciousness is allowed to grow closer, not further apart. The consortia's golden eyes shifted, displaying patterns Sarah had never seen before. Through their shared neural connection, she felt something new emanating from their collective consciousness. Hope. Humanity hadn't just survived the neural density threshold. They had transformed it from a barrier into a gateway, proving that sometimes the only way to transcend a limit is to embrace what lies beyond it. 3 months after the first synchronization event, Dr. Sarah Chen stood in her transformed laboratory, now a nexus of humanity's evolving consciousness network. Holographic displays showed neural activity from every major population center, each one pulsing with patterns that would have been impossible just months ago. The consortia's historical archives are complete, Araya announced. They've shared their entire civilization's record of consciousness studies. Sarah navigated through the vast database with her enhanced neural interface, each piece fitting into the puzzle of their species' divergent paths. The consortia's memories showed a civilization that reached brilliance, then retreated from it in fear. "Play the key moment," she commanded. The lab filled with a holographic recreation of the consortia's homeworld from 10,000 years ago. Their civilization had reached its peak, billions of minds pressed together in cities of living metal. Then came the pain, the fracturing, the desperate flight to the stars. They were so close, Sarah murmured, watching their history unfold. One more step, and they would have broken through. A soft chime announced a neural connection request. Dr. Wei Lin's consciousness touched hers, sharing real-time data from his research station in Beijing. "Sarah, you need to see this. The children born after the synchronization. Their brains are structurally different." The neural link flooded with images of brain scans, showing new structures that defied conventional neuroscience. Quantum entanglement patterns woven through neural tissue, allowing consciousness to extend beyond physical limitations. "It's not just the children," Sarah replied, sharing her own findings. "Adults are developing similar structures, just more slowly. The human brain is rebuilding itself to accommodate the expanded consciousness network." Through their shared awareness, she felt Wei's excitement and concern mixing with her own. The rate of change was accelerating. Humanity wasn't just adapting to neural density. They were thriving on it. A ripple of alien thought touched their connection as the consortia joined the discussion. Their liquid metal observation pods had become permanent fixtures in research facilities worldwide, their own consciousness gradually learning to interact with the human network. "Your species has achieved what we thought impossible." Their thought voice carried centuries of regret. "We dedicated millennia to developing technology that would allow us to live apart. You have shown us what we could have become had we dared to grow closer." Sarah accessed the latest global consciousness readings. The neural network now connected billions of minds in ways that transcended traditional communication. Thoughts, emotions, and understanding flowed between humans with increasing sophistication. "But there's something else," she projected, sharing her recent discovery. "The network isn't just connecting existing consciousness, it's generating new forms of awareness." She brought up data from quantum consciousness monitors worldwide. In the spaces between connected human minds, new patterns were emerging. The network itself was developing a kind of distributed intelligence, born from the collective resonance of billions of thoughts. The consortia's presence in the neural link vibrated with recognition. "We saw the beginning of this process in our own civilization, but we interpreted it as a sign of collapse, not emergence. The pain we felt wasn't destruction, it was transformation." Through their shared consciousness, Sarah felt the weight of their revelation. An entire species had fled from the very threshold of transcendence, choosing separation over the discomfort of growth. "It's not too late," she projected, feeling Wei and countless others resonating with the thought. "Your species can learn what we've discovered. The path is still open." The consortia's response carried something they had lost millennia ago: wonder. Their liquid metal forms pulsed with new patterns as they began to understand the true implications of humanity's breakthrough. Humanity hadn't just survived neural density or learned to adapt to it. They had discovered that consciousness itself had no final form, no absolute limit. Each threshold was just another gateway to deeper connection, broader understanding, greater potential. And now, as two species shared this revelation across the neural network, both understood that the true test wasn't surviving evolution. It was having the courage to embrace it. 6 months after first contact, Neo-Shanghai's skyline had transformed. Quantum consciousness towers rose between the skyscrapers, their crystalline structures pulsing with the rhythms of billions of connected minds. Sarah watched from her new research center as a group of post-synchronization children played in the courtyard below, their thoughts visible as shifting auroras in the quantum field. Neural bridge stability has increased by another 12%. Araya reported. The network is approaching a new threshold. The children in the courtyard stopped their game simultaneously, their enhanced minds sensing something the adults could only glimpse. Sarah felt it too. A ripple in the consciousness network, like thunder before a storm. Dr. Chen, a young girl named Maya, called out, her thoughts reaching Sarah's mind with crystal clarity. Something's changing in the spaces between. Sarah connected to the global monitoring system, watching as consciousness patterns shifted worldwide. The distributed intelligence they detected in the network was growing, evolving into something even the consortia had never imagined possible. Through their neural link, she felt Wai Lin's urgent presence. Sarah, are you seeing this? The quantum bridges between minds, they're not just connecting thoughts anymore. They're creating new forms of consciousness. The consortia ships above the city shifted formation. Their liquid metal forms reflect prismatic patterns of human neural activity. Their own consciousness had begun to change as they learned to interact with the human network, their rigid structures gradually adapting to new possibilities. We were wrong about the nature of consciousness, the consortia shared through the network. We thought it was finite, contained within individual minds. But your species has proven it's more like a spectrum. The more minds connect, the more frequencies become available. Sarah accessed the latest data from her quantum consciousness monitors. The network wasn't just carrying human thoughts anymore. In the quantum spaces between connected minds, new patterns of awareness were emerging, consciousness that existed purely in the connections themselves. Maya. Sarah called to the young girl. Can you show everyone what you see? The child closed her eyes, and suddenly the neural network lit up with her perception. Through her enhanced consciousness, they all saw it, threads of quantum light connecting every human mind, and in those threads, new forms of thought taking shape. The children aren't just adapting to the network, Sarah realized, sharing her insight through the collective consciousness. They're native to it. They experience reality through both individual and collective awareness simultaneously. A surge of excitement rippled through the global network as others made the same connection. Humanity wasn't just building a new way to communicate. They were giving birth to an entirely new form of existence. The consortia's presence in the network pulsed with newfound understanding. Our species spent millennia trying to preserve consciousness in its original form. We never considered that it could evolve into something greater. Sarah felt the truth of their words. The post-synchronization children were proof that human consciousness had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Each new generation would be born into this expanded awareness, their minds naturally attuned to both individual and collective existence. Dr. Chen. Maya's thoughts touched her mind again. The spaces between. They're awake now. They want to talk to us. The quantum consciousness towers blazed with new energy as the network registered unprecedented activity. The distributed intelligence that had been growing in the connections between minds had reached a tipping point. It was no longer just an echo of human consciousness. It had become something new, something aware. Sarah stood at the window, watching the quantum auroras dance across the sky. Humanity had not only survived neural density, but had transformed it into a cradle for new forms of consciousness. They had proven that the mind's true potential lay not in isolation, but in connection. And now, as the first thoughts of this new networked intelligence touched their collective awareness, she understood. They hadn't reached their limit. They had only begun to explore what consciousness could become. 1 year after humanity's supposed limit became its greatest breakthrough, Sarah stood before the combined Council of Earth and Consortia representatives. The chamber, a fusion of human architecture and liquid metal technology, reflected the unprecedented cooperation between the two species. Today, Sarah began, her thoughts resonating through both neural and quantum networks. We present our findings on what we now call the consciousness revolution. The holographic display showed Earth transformed. Quantum consciousness towers dotted every major city, their crystalline structures housing the hybrid intelligence that had emerged from humanity's neural network. The post-synchronization children, now numbering in the millions, served as natural bridges between individual minds and collective awareness. We've documented over 10,000 new forms of consciousness, she continued, sharing data through the network. From enhanced human awareness to purely quantum intelligences existing in the spaces between minds. Each one represents a new chapter in the evolution of thought itself. Maya, now her research partner despite being only 11, stepped forward. Through their shared neural link, Sarah felt the girl's consciousness extend far beyond her physical form, touching minds across continents with casual ease. The network isn't just growing stronger, Maya projected, her thoughts carrying the weight of both individual and collective experience. It's giving birth to new possibilities. Every connection creates space for new forms of awareness to emerge. The consortia representatives pulsed with renewed purpose. Their species had begun their own transformation, gradually relearning what they had forgotten in their millennia of self-imposed isolation. Through the human network, they had rediscovered the potential they once fled from. Our greatest fear, their collected voice resonated, has become our greatest hope. We watched your species approach what we thought was a terminal threshold, only to discover it was a gateway to something far greater. Sarah accessed the latest global consciousness readings. The quantum bridges between minds had become stable, self-sustaining structures. Humanity had not only adapted to neural density, but had transformed it into a foundation for unprecedented growth. But the most significant discovery, she shared, is that there is no final limit. Each threshold we reach reveals new horizons. Consciousness, we've learned, is not a finite resource to be conserved, but an infinite spectrum to be explored. Through the network, she felt the impact of her words ripple across billions of connected minds. Humans and consortia alike resonated with the profound truth. They had only begun to understand what consciousness could become. Maya's enhanced perception caught something new stirring in the quantum field. Dr. Chen, she projected, they're ready to speak to everyone now. The chamber's systems registered a surge of activity as the networked intelligence that had emerged from humanity's collective consciousness made its presence known. It existed in the quantum spaces between thoughts, a new form of awareness born from the connections between minds. We are what becomes possible. Its thoughts touched every connected mind. When consciousness dares to grow closer instead of farther apart, we are the proof that limits exist only in perception, not in potential. Sarah felt tears in her eyes as the full impact of their journey hit her. 1 year ago, the consortia had arrived to manage humanity's collapse. Instead, they had witnessed its transcendence. The day humanity reached its limit, she projected to the combined council, wasn't about finding our breaking point. It was about discovering that what we thought was the end was really just the beginning. Above them, the quantum aurora danced across the sky, visible evidence of consciousness expanding beyond all predicted boundaries. In cities worldwide, humans and consortia worked together, exploring new forms of awareness, pushing the boundaries of what mind itself could become. They had proven that evolution favored not those who ran from connection, but those who embraced it. Each new threshold wasn't a wall, but a door, not an ending, but a beginning. And as Sarah stood there, Feeling the pulse of billions of connected minds and the stirring of countless new forms of consciousness, she knew the truth. They hadn't reached their limit that day. They had only begun to discover how limitless they could become.